According to 2024 data from the United States Census Bureau, the Black homeownership rate across the 50 largest metropolitan areas in America sits at just 43.6%. Compare that to 70.3% for white households, and you begin to understand the scale of the problem. The median income for Black households was $56,020 in 2024, compared to $88,010 for white households, a gap of nearly $32,000. And even when Black Americans do own homes, the median value of those properties is $278,500, which is almost 23% lower than the overall national median of $360,600. These are not just numbers. They represent millions of families locked out of the most fundamental wealth-building tool in the country. Today, we are counting down 8 cities where this crisis is hitting hardest. Number 8. Seattle, Washington. Seattle has become one of the most expensive housing markets in the country, and for Black residents, the barriers are especially steep. The Black homeownership rate in the Seattle metropolitan area is just 33.8%, placing it among the 10 worst major metros in the nation. The tech boom that transformed Seattle into a global hub for companies like Amazon and Microsoft also sent housing prices soaring beyond what most middle-income families can afford. But Black households in Seattle face additional obstacles beyond price. The city has a long and documented history of racially restrictive covenants that barred Black families from purchasing homes in white neighborhoods for decades. Those covenants were outlawed, but their effects linger in patterns of residential segregation that persist today. Black residents in Seattle are concentrated in neighborhoods with lower property values and fewer investment opportunities, and as gentrification accelerates in areas like the Central District, long-standing Black communities are being displaced rather than empowered to own. Number 7. New York City, New York. The largest city in the United States also has one of the lowest Black homeownership rates among major metros, at just 33.4%. New York's housing market is notoriously expensive, and the vast majority of its residents are renters. But that burden falls disproportionately on Black New Yorkers. Historically, Black neighborhoods in Brooklyn, Harlem, and parts of Queens have experienced rapid gentrification over the past 2 decades, pushing out families who had lived there for generations. Rising property taxes, aggressive real estate speculation, and the conversion of affordable housing units into luxury condominiums have all contributed to an environment where Black homeownership is declining rather than growing. The median income gap compounds the problem. In a city where the average home costs well over $500,000, Black households earning significantly less than their white counterparts are simply priced out. And mortgage denial rates for Black applicants remain higher than for any other racial group, even when income levels are comparable. Los Angeles ranks among the worst cities in America for Black homeownership, with a rate of just 32.4%. In a city where the median home price exceeds $800,000, homeownership is already a stretch for most working families. But for Black Angelenos, the math is even more punishing. Los Angeles has one of the most severe housing shortages in the nation, and decades of exclusionary zoning laws restricted the construction of affordable multifamily housing in wealthier. Number 5. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit is a majority Black city, and yet Black homeownership there remains deeply troubled. The city has one of the widest gaps between Black and white mortgage denial rates in the entire country, with Black applicants being denied at rates more than 8 percentage points higher than the overall population. The roots of this crisis go back generations. Detroit was one of the most aggressively redlined cities in America. Federal maps drawn in the 1930s labeled Black neighborhoods as hazardous for investment, cutting off access to mortgages and starving those communities of capital for decades. Even after redlining was outlawed, its effects continued through predatory lending and discriminatory appraisal practices. The 2008 housing collapse devastated Detroit's black homeowners. Foreclosures swept through black neighborhoods at staggering rates, and property values collapsed. Between 2020 and 2024, the average home price in Detroit jumped 72%, but most of that appreciation has benefited investors and flippers rather than longtime black residents who lost their homes during the crisis. Today, black families in Detroit who can afford a mortgage still face disproportionately high denial rates, and the city's property tax system has been criticized for overassessing homes in black neighborhoods. Number 4. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee has one of the most severe racial homeownership gaps in the country. While the city has a black population of roughly 15.7%, black residents own just 7.3% of the homes. That gap of more than 8 percentage points is among the widest of any major American metro. Milwaukee's story is rooted in one of the most segregated urban landscapes in the United States. Studies have consistently ranked Milwaukee as one of the most racially divided cities in the nation, with black residents concentrated on the north side of the city in neighborhoods that have seen decades of disinvestment. Redlining, racial steering by real estate agents, and restrictive lending practices created a geography of exclusion that persists to this day. The wealth gap in Milwaukee is staggering. Black households in the metro area earn a fraction of what white households earn, making the accumulation of a down payment nearly impossible for many families. Meanwhile, mortgage denial rates for black applicants remain among the highest in the Midwest. The lack of affordable housing stock in decent condition further compounds the problem, as many homes available at lower price points require significant repairs that first-time buyers cannot afford. Number 3. Fresno, California. Fresno might not be the first city that comes to mind when people think about the housing crisis, but for black residents, the situation is dire. The black homeownership rate in the Fresno metropolitan area is just 30.5%, making it the third worst major metro in the country. Fresno is often considered one of California's more affordable cities, but that affordability is relative. The median home price in Fresno County is around $410,000, and the minimum qualifying income is over $103,000. For black households in the area, the median income falls well below that threshold. In 2023, only 9% of black Californians could afford a median-priced home, compared to 28% of Asian residents and 21% of white residents. The affordability gap between black households and the general population in Fresno is among the widest in the state. Beyond the numbers, Fresno's black community faces a deeper structural challenge. Housing advocates in the city have pointed out that many black residents are unaware of the home buying resources available to them or believe that home ownership is simply out of reach. Organizations on the ground are working to change that through education and outreach, but the gap remains enormous. Number 2. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minneapolis holds the unfortunate distinction of having the widest gap between black and white homeownership rates of any major city in the United States. The black homeownership rate in the Minneapolis metro area is just 30.1%, while the white homeownership rate sits at around 77%. That is a gap of nearly 50 percentage points. Minnesota regularly ranks as one of the best states in the country for quality of life, but those rankings mask a deeply unequal reality. The median household income for white families in Minnesota is around $80,000. For black families, it is roughly $47,000. That income gap makes saving for a down payment nearly impossible for many black households. The 2008 financial crisis was catastrophic for black homeowners in Minneapolis. Subprime lenders targeted black communities concentrated in certain parts of the Twin Cities And when the housing market collapsed, Black families lost their homes at devastating rates. The homeownership rate has never recovered. In North Minneapolis, investors now own and rent out more than 10% of the housing stock, replacing potential homeownership opportunities with rental units that are often more expensive month to month than a mortgage would be. Researchers at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis have found that even when controlling for income, employment, and other demographic factors, a significant portion of the homeownership gap remains unexplained, suggesting that systemic discrimination continues to play a role. Number 1. San Jose, California. At the very bottom of the list is San Jose, California, the heart of Silicon Valley. The Black homeownership rate here is just 29.2%, the lowest of any major metropolitan area in the United States. San Jose is one of the most expensive housing markets in the world, and that extreme cost of entry has effectively shut Black families out of home ownership almost entirely. The median home price in the San Jose metro exceeds $1 million, making it virtually impossible for any household earning below 6 figures to even consider buying. And while Black residents of San Jose tend to have higher incomes than Black residents in many other cities, they still earn significantly less than their white and Asian counterparts in the region. The wealth gap, combined with limited housing inventory and sky-high prices, creates a nearly impenetrable barrier. San Jose also has a very small Black population, representing just around 2.4% of the metro area. That small population means fewer community resources, fewer culturally competent lenders, and less political leverage to advocate for targeted housing programs. The result is a city that sits at the center of the American technology revolution, generating trillions of dollars in wealth, while its Black residents are among the least likely in the entire country to own a home. In 2024, Black Americans held just 3.4% of the nation's total wealth, despite making up nearly 14% of the population. The homeownership gap is a central driver of that wealth disparity. Until cities across this country confront the structural barriers, from discriminatory lending practices to exclusionary zoning laws to the lingering effects of redlining, this gap will not close on its own. Some estimates suggest that, at the current pace, it could take more than 300 years for Black homeownership rates to reach parity with white homeownership rates. 300 years. That is not a gap. That is a generational crisis.